Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups. It's time for Robbie Rants. Today we're going to be talking about Doomsday Clock number 5. That's right everybody, yet another issue of Doomsday Clock is here, issue number 5. We are almost at the halfway point to the series, so a warning, if you haven't been warned already, there are going to be spoilers in this video about what happens in Doomsday Clock number 5. We're going to do a recap and a little bit of a review. I loved this chapter. I loved this one so much. The last issue was fantastic, really explore the origin of the new Rorschach. This one, now that all the pieces are in place, all the Watchmen characters are in the DC universe, they are now, like, things are not now moving and progressing a little bit more fast, a little bit more quickly with a brisk momentum, right? But this was a great chapter. I loved it. You have a lot of DC characters interacting with some of the Watchmen characters. Lots of movement that doesn't seem like so much, but lots of subtle thematic stuff in there as well. So we start off with this image. Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias, he has been captured. Of course, they think he tried to assassinate Luthor. It was actually the comedian, but he got thrown out the window. So now he's in the hospital, and of course he escapes with ease. Now there's a lot of cool stuff in here. The name of this issue is There Is No God. And the idea that Geoff Johns, the writer, is proposing in this book, basically, and that's even submitted by the quote by Eugene O'Neill at the end of the book, which says, "When men make gods, there is no God." And at that moment right here, even when it says there is no God, I want to point out that one of the guards says, "Superman's the only thing you can believe in anymore." So Watchmen and Doomsday Clock, we know that first of all what Johns is doing with this book is he's taking that dark dystopian feel of the Watchmen, of this negative, sour, like just degrading of the superhero, this deconstruction of the idea of the superhero that Alan Moore was doing. And then DC is like the exact opposite of that. It's a place filled with hope and optimism and all this stuff. And that comes into question in a scene later on involving Veidt. So Veidt basically escapes pretty easily, gets his cat, and just leaves, right? So now we click over to Lois Lane at the Daily Planet in an argument with her editor, Perry White. This scene is really interesting to me because now this whole Superman theory, it's starting to come more into focus about what it actually is. The idea that the majority of the metahumans on Earth are all Americans. So there's this conspiracy theory almost that's being perpetrated out across the world and causing all kinds of unrest that the American government has been secretly creating these metahumans, and that a lot of the villains and the heroes like Firestorm and Killer Frost, Metamorpho and his villains, this is all just a big front, a big training ground to put these new soldiers, this new arms race into the world, right? There's a lot of uneasiness, a lot of unrest and distrust that's happening in the governments and Watchmen. That's being reflected in Doomsday Clock, but in the DC universe, really interesting, seeing the influence of the Watchmen characters in this world, but also seeing the fallacy of this hopeful, optimistic DCU and how we're all, as fans, even kind of blinded to that. So Lois is arguing because she knows that this whole Superman theory is just bogus. She thinks Lex Luthor is the one in charge of it. And so then one of the Mikhail Arkadin, who is the Posar guy, the Firestorm guy, or whatever, from Russia, so the Ukraine, okay? So he shows up and he says, "Yeah, man, the American government made the American Firestorm, but I'm, you know." So there's all these heroes, the American Firestorm, Ronnie, comes out and is like, that's BS, that's not even the case. But Killer Frost is out saying it is the case, and apparently Man-Bat came out and said the same thing. There's a lot of stuff in the back matter here that really gets into that and what heroes are on which sides across the world. There's a lot of stuff going on in this book with Markovia involving Geoff, that character. So that's very interesting. So now we're back to Rorschach. When he escaped from Arkham Asylum, he has Saturn Girl with him, and that's really cool. And there's some nice imagery right there of the moths to the lamps. That's really cool. Another lamp is going to get utilized pretty soon here, because the next scene, after we get a little bit more just back matter stuff about this uneasy alliance between Russia and Markovia and how they're shutting down their borders and all this kind of stuff. So this tension, these international tensions are rising, and I really like the pace at which it's set out. Like, it seriously just works so well for me. So back to the retirement home where Johnny Thunder's been. They mentioned he's like 100 and something years old. He's old, right? So they're still watching the Nathaniel Dusk thing, which DC is going to be reprinting that 80s Nathaniel Dusk series soon, so that's cool. So you got the Nathaniel Dusk thing going on. Apparently they're still watching the same movie over and over. So Johnny Thunder has escaped from the retirement home. pretty much like Killer or the Mothman dude in the previous issue in the Watchmen universe escaped from the asylum with Rorschach, and I don't know, a lot of cool parallels there. Like, this book really does parallel a lot in the original Watchmen, especially the riot scene. We'll get to that in a minute. So Johnny Thunder's trying to get a train ticket to go to Pittsburgh because there's a steel company there that was destroyed in Green Flame. So he believes that if he goes there, he can find the Green Lantern, Alan Scott's lantern, and maybe that will help him find his genie. Johnny Thunder, of course, had the genie that was back in the JSA days. So Geoff Johns is slowly building up this return of the JSA thing. He doesn't have the money. It's a very sad scene. This poor old man is out there on his own, and he has to take a bus to Pittsburgh. Now we go to Adrian Veidt. He's escaped. He goes back to Night Owl's little bug chopper thing, whatever, and Batman's there. Batman's read Rorschach's journal. He knows everything about him. They have a little scene that starts right there. Then we cut to the comedian. The comedian apparently is chasing after Mime and Marionette, who have their little scene, and I just think these characters are super twisted, and I love them. So now we go back to Batman and Veidt, and they have this discussion, and this is where a lot of these themes come out in the dialogue, in the narrative, because Batman basically confronts Veidt, says, I know what you did on your world, the chaos that you caused, and the deaths and the murder, all that stuff, right? And then Veidt's like, where you think you're something special? You guys are so focused on your like good, bad, like good versus evil whole thing, and just throwing people in prison as they come right back out, and like you're not actually fixing any problems in the world. I may have failed. I will admit my failure, but at least I tried to actually solve the problems with my world. I weaned them off of gasoline and oil and all this stuff, right? All these examples. So it's a really cool dichotomy right here between the world of the Watchmen, which typically is seen as very dark and depressing and dour, and DC's this hopeful, optimistic place where the heroes are like gods on earth, right? But they're showing you that, like, on that Watchmen side, though, I mean, Adrian Veidt and Dr. Manhattan, they did a lot of good. They really did. Was the ends justify the means type stuff. And over at DC, though, is it all just a charade? And I love this line where he starts talking about, you guys are now caught in a vicious cycle of entertaining yourselves, ignoring the world's real problems. That's a great scene. So now we got Lois confronting Lex Luthor about the Superman theory and all that stuff, and Lex is like obviously kind of somewhat behind it, or whatever's going on, causing unrest in the metahuman population. And that right there is going to be our first glimpse of Superman in costume. He's listening, and Lex reveals to Lois that he believes he knows who is responsible, who has created all these metahumans, and he's someone who was once in the Justice League. Very interesting. Now Johnny Thunder is back in Pittsburgh, or he's finally in Pittsburgh. He goes to this burned down steel place. He gets jumped by a bunch of miscreants. Now we're cutting back to Adrian and Bats, all right? So they're in his little night owl thing that he took, and Adrian does this sweet little cool move, and he like spins it around, whatever, and knocks Batman out. Mime and Marionette show up during this riot. They're after the Joker, by the way, because the Joker, apparently they got, you know, remember they got messed up because they were coming after him because they were wearing makeup in Gotham City, and apparently you can't do that when the Joker's around. So they find out that the Joker's doing something at the Bat Signal at that night, so they show up. That's where the riots are going. That's where Adrian and Batman are right now. So the riots are going on below them. Now we got a little bit about Black Adam. They showed earlier in the issue Jack Ryder, that's Creeper. He was abducted in Kandak or something by the Cobra cult, something like that, right? And Black Adam shows up and saves him. Black Adam is going to offer safe haven for any metahuman who feels like they are being disgraced or disowned by their own governments. So that's interesting. It's all starting to come together now. Just boom, doom, doom, doom. So you got Johnny Thunder. He finds Green Lanterns, like he finds the lantern. It's there. Meanwhile, Batman falls out. He's falling towards the crowd. He's trying to get away. He gets captured by the crowd. So Johnny Thunder has the lantern. He starts getting beaten up by these thugs that are around him. And then Batman's getting beat up by the mob and all this stuff. And then cut, bam. Rorschach and Saturn Girl show up to help Johnny Thunder out of his jam. Mime and Marionette are there like, whoa, what's going on? And then up there on the roof at the very, very end, the Joker shows up finally. One of the Jokers, and he does not look like the Joker from the Greg Capullo, Scott Snyder stuff at all. What is the lantern? The moth flies towards the lantern. That imagery right there again. Joker coming face to face with the Mime and Marionette. I believe one of the Jokers might possibly be their child that they are looking for. And alas, there is Batman bloodied and broken and beaten at the end. And the back matter explains a lot about the different metahumans that have been supposedly exposed in the Superman theory, where they are, the international unrest. Talks about Kandak, about Black Adam, has this cool little Metropolis at. I loved it though. I thought it was great. That's what happened in the issue. Like I said, I thought it really kind of pushed things forward because now we got the Watchmen characters in the DCU. We have the DCU characters interacting with the Watchmen characters, and we got just everything just feels hyped up. The suspense, it's just the pace of it. I'm loving it so far. I hate that it's every couple months, but I'm loving that it's coming out. Gary Frank's artwork with Brad Anderson on the colors, once again, amazing. A great tribute to the dark and foreboding sense of the original Watchmen series by Dave Gibbons, but it also has a little bit of that DCU, just straight up superhero feel that Gary Frank is totally typically accustomed to. I love the book. I think it's great. I want to know what you thought about it. Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to check us out later on for weekly comic book reviews, weekly pop culture wrap-ups, podcasts, and more. All that can be found here on YouTube if you subscribe. So be sure to do that, like and share, and check us out at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts, the most latest stuff, all that jazz. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Please do, like I said, like, share, subscribe. I'm rambling, I'm losing. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading and Doomsday clocking.